The following news flash is brought to you by the Lone Star Lowdown, providing your daily bulletins for the commodities market. Today in history, news updates, and the inside scoop into the tides of the alternative. Markets for Wednesday, the 3rd of February, 2016 are currently trading with gold at $1,138.10 an ounce, silver $14.63 an ounce, Texas crude $29.88 a barrel, and Bitcoin is currently sitting at about 370 U.S. currency. Today in history, the year 1966, the Luna 9 Russian spacecraft became the first unmanned probe to achieve a soft landing on the moon, or any other planetary body for that matter. Also known as the YE-6, number 13, it was the first probe to transmit photographic data to Earth from the lunar surface. In recent news, Sandra Merritt, one of the two indicted with tampering with governmental documents in order to create fake driver's license in a plot with anti-abortion activists to obtain the undercover video footage exposing Planned Parenthood for selling human body parts, turned herself into Texas authorities today. She posted her $2,000 bond and was later released. However, the news conference that she was scheduled to hold afterwards was canceled. David Daleiden, the main activist behind the videos, plans to turn himself over to authorities tomorrow, his attorneys have stated. He does ironically face an additional misdemeanor charge related to the purchase of human tissue. Ironic because, if you recall, a grand jury in Houston, Texas, that had been tasked with looking into the wrongdoing by Planned Parenthood announced that it was indicting Daleiden and Merritt instead. The results for the Iowa caucus are as follows. For the Republican Party, Ted Cruz, 8 delegates, or 27.7%. Donald Trump, 7 delegates, or 24.3%. Mark Rubio, 7 delegates, 23.1%. Ben Carson, 3 delegates, or 9.3%. Rand Paul, 1 delegate, 8,481 votes, 4.1%. Officially, Rand Paul did drop out this morning, stating the lack of funds and support as his main cause. Jeb Bush, 1 delegate at 2.8%. Carly Fiorina, 1 delegate, 1.9%. And John Kasich, 1 delegate at 1.9%. For the Democrats, it was actually decided by a coin toss which gave Hillary 6 wins out of 6 tosses. Hillary Clinton got 23 delegates and Bernie Sanders 21 delegates. This has been your lowdown for February 3rd, 2016.
Good evening and welcome. It is time now for INN World Report Radio here on the Great Logos Radio Network. It is, roughly 6 p.m. in the Central Time Zone. And where I'm talking to you from right now, it's already 7 o'clock, and that would be Brooklyn, New York. My name is Tom Kiley, and I have the distinct honor of bringing this program to you on 2 nights a week here on the Great Logos Radio Network, the INN World Report radio program. That would be on Tuesdays and on Thursday nights. So here we are on a Thursday. That would be Thursday, February 4th, 2016. And welcome to the show. We've got a very, very special show for you tonight. I like to think that most of the shows, if not all of them, are special in their own way. Ain't that special? But tonight is more special than most because we will be having a guest during our second hour who has never been on the program before. In fact, someone who I haven't spoken with in a long time. And the only time I've ever spoken with him before was when I myself was a caller into his radio program here in New York City on the WABC station, which is one of the most powerful AM stations in the country, a very big talk radio station here in the New York area, and one that I used to listen to quite a bit until they went totally right wing, which is not to say it's not interesting, but it's not balanced enough to get good information. I had to go find it elsewhere. And that's probably around the same time I decided to get into the alternative media myself. But when our guest, of whom I speak, and that would be Lionel, the great Lionel, Emmy Award-winning radio talk show personality, philosopher, raconteur, opinion writer, trial attorney. He's got a whole lot of accolades and epithets that we could apply to him. I'm sure he would have a few interesting ones himself. In fact, I'm sure he does, and we'll be talking about that too, no doubt. But I must say, friends, this is, if you've ever listened to Lionel speaking, then you know kind of like where I'm headed with this. It's hard to describe the man because it may sound hackneyed, it may sound trite, but actually he's literally one of a kind in my reckoning. And you know me, you've been listening to me for a long time. I don't use terms like that lightly, but he's rather unique and very knowledgeable, extremely entertaining. This is somebody who can take knowledge and information that you really want to get your hands on and thought processes that maybe you haven't considered yourself and make it extremely entertaining at the same time. And he does that with a mix of humor. He's very funny. I believe he's actually functioned as a stand-up comic in his own right, which would be, I'm sure, no problem for him to do. And he is, what's the word I'm looking for? Erudite? Did I pronounce that right? Erudite? I used to say erudite, then I changed it to erudite, and now I'm back to erudite again. But in any case, this is a guy with a tremendous vocabulary, more than what he needs. And so the excess, I would say, he applies in color and, just to make it all that more interesting. I have had to look up a number of words when listening to Lionel. So I'm all excited. I'm sure it shows. I'll try not to be much of a sycophant when he's on, but if I lapse into that mode, it's for good reason. And I'm really looking forward to this. And I reached out to Lionel not very long ago, only about a week and a half ago, because I had come across one of his video clips. And by the way, his website is lionelmedia.com. And he used to, like I said, he used to be a regular here on WABC in New York for years during the Clinton administration, during the impeachment process for for Bill Clinton. And as a trial lawyer and a very astute observer of the human condition, I learned a great deal about that aspect of the law from listening to Lionel. And I would say, and I'm thinking that he himself might describe himself this way. It's not easy with anybody these days, but certainly with him. More libertarian than most, but he's definitely sort of liberal on some issues and conservative on others. But overall, is sort of a libertarian predominantly, but not your typical one by any means. And I would even say with a tinge of the libertine, with a libertine bent, and I do mean bent, but perhaps we can even get into that with him a little bit as well. So that's what's going to happen in the second hour of the show. I'm very excited about that. And then in about 10 minutes or so, 5-10 minutes, we'll be joined by Caleb Maupin. Now, Caleb recently joined our stable of guests, and he's in the corner of the stable where we call the up-and-coming young stars in the alternative media. And I met Caleb late last year, or in the fall, I should say, through the auspices of Dr. Webster Tarpley when he was in town at one of his events. And very, very bright young guy, writer, put out a book that we've talked about on the show. I don't have it right in front of me, so I can't recite the title verbatim, but it's about U.S.-Iranian relations, as I recall. And he's cranking out some great articles. He just put one out in the in New Eastern Outlook, and I thought it was really good. So I asked him to come on the show so that we could talk about it. And it is about, well, here, I'll tell you right now. Let's see. Sorry about that. He's talking about the price of oil and how it's being manipulated. Now, we talk about that. We talk about that a lot on this show, going back to James Norman, author of The Oil Card, another fellow New Yorker who's been on the program, and how the national security state manipulates the price of oil for, I wish I could tell you, friends, that it was for national security reasons, but it's not. The upper echelons of the national security state are actually the servants of oligarchy, if you ask me, of Wall Street, and they have certain economic and financial and objectives that they want to achieve in the world, and a lot of that oftentimes involves knocking off oligarchs in other parts of the world so that they can cut in on their piece of the pie. So that's what a lot of this is all about with the national security state. In this case, they've been back in the Soviet era. Norman claims that the price of oil was lowered to hurt the then Soviet Union, that form of government that they had in Russia. And after the Soviet Union collapsed, the price went up. which, of course, benefited the oil oligarchs, but also hurt the Chinese, who had to import, something like, at the time anyway, it may be different now, but the Chinese were needing to import about half of their energy needs every day. So now that the Soviet Union is gone and the Russian Federation is coming back online, there's a reason for them to lower the price again, which is the Soviet Union, as well as Venezuela, which was under the Hugo Chavez and his protege, and now Iran coming back online. Isn't it interesting? Iran sanctions get lifted right in time for the price of oil to be in the tank. So that's what Caleb's writing about. So we're going to have Caleb on to talk about that. So that's the gist of tonight's show. Action-packed, and we're really excited about it. Like that, So, and then, hey, a big shout-out to our good friend Scottish John. I'm not sure if we'll have time to call in anybody because we're going to take a break and then go right into our guests. But Scottish John strikes again. He put me in touch with some great alternative media people in Scotland, Kev Baker and the Kev Baker Show. And I was on there, I don't know, about 3 months ago maybe, and had a great time. And then they had me back on again last night. And, they were very interested in what's going on in the U.S. with this whole Donald Trump thing. Well, I don't know if you saw, but Jimmy Carter just sort of endorsed Donald Trump, endorsed him. He said that if he had to choose between Donald Trump and Ted Cruz, he'd pick Donald Trump. Now, sorry about that for anybody in Texas who likes Ted Cruz, but that's the story. I think it's also very, very interesting that the powers that be are just going, as my father, well, I can't say what he used to say, but they're going bananas, let's just say that. Going nuts, throwing the kitchen sink, anything they can to derail Donald Trump. And that's not just on his own party on the right, it's the left as well. And even now it's getting ugly. And to an extent, the anointed candidate on the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton, is in trouble. So they're attacking her challenger as well with this nonsense in the Iowa caucuses of, basically it being a tie, and they flipped 6 coins, all of which went in Hillary's direction. That's not a win at all. It's a tie at best, if that. And that's if you can believe that there was no hanky-panky going on with the vote counting. And so, too, on the Republican side, it turns out Ted Cruz won by about 3 or 4 points. But, of course, that's always suspect in and of itself, particularly when the powers that be have a vested interest in one candidate winning over the other. But then it turns out that there's some dirty tricks. It looks like Ted Cruz people jumped on a conveniently placed CNN story that made it sound like Ben Carson was getting out of the race and appealing to Ben Carson's voters to vote instead for Ted Cruz. Point being, if that hadn't gone out, there must have been some votes that switched, therefore, to Ted Cruz. How many? I don't know, but you don't need all that many, maybe 3 or 4 per precinct to swing the difference. Because if, 3 or 4% of Ted Cruz's votes went instead to Ben Carson, I think Donald Trump would have been the winner. So there's a lot of shenanigans going on for sure, and with good reason. I think that both Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump represent legitimate threats. Maybe not as deep of a threat as we would like to see, but certainly some kind of a threat. So it's all getting curiouser and curiouser. I was in Scotland last night talking about that. And, I had such a great time. The second time I've been on with those guys, I think I'll have them come on and join us one night. Maybe we can have Scottish John on as a guest host as well. So we'll have it'll be an all Scotland night. So that's what's coming up in the program for tonight's show. So there you have it. I wish I had time to take some calls. I don't, because we're going to be heading into break momentarily. So that's that. And like I said, Lionel, now, I hope you have heard Lionel. And if you haven't, I hope you'll consider listening to him. I don't even know where this is going to go. I told Lionel in the emails back and forth that he is such a great speaker. He could talk about anything, and it would be interesting, I promise you. So I don't even need to have an agenda with Lionel. And he's also an excellent contemporaneous speaker as well. So we're really going to have a great time tonight on tonight's show. Caleb Malkin will be joining us in just a moment. And then in the second hour, for the first time on INN World Report Radio, Lionel, Emmy Award-winning radio personality.
Now.
You are listening to the Logos Radio Network. LogosRadioNetwork.com.
Baby ambassador to England or France, may like to gamble, might like to dance, maybe the heavyweight champion of the world, but you got to serve somebody. Hey, you gotta serve somebody. Maybe the devil, maybe the Lord, but you gotta serve somebody. educate. Maybe a businessman, some high-degree thief. May call you doctor, may call you chief. You got to serve somebody. Oh, serve somebody. Might be the devil all along.
Friends, welcome back to Great Etta James. We've got some new bumpers coming for you. I've been saying that for a while, but I was up late working on some for you again the other night. And Caleb, we're having a bit of a technical issue here, so he should be joining us momentarily. I think we'll probably do him with the phone, but we will be hearing from him shortly. Caleb Maupin, that is his article, was, let's see, about the Rockefellers and oil. Yeah, playing with the price of oil. You know, it's getting dangerously low for some people. Now, that's not a problem for those of us who drive around a lot, I suppose. But, you know, the Saudis, they require a lot of money to pay off the bribes they need to pay, you know, with all of their sheiks and everybody and princes and all that sort of thing. There's a lot of patronage that goes on in Saudi Arabia. And I saw some numbers recently. At this rate, they're going to run out of money in a few years. So very, very interesting as far as that goes. Bernie Sanders, we were saying, the challenger to the anointed Hillary Clinton in a dead heat, basically, if you believe there was no hanky-panky with that vote counting. And Donald Trump losing by a few points. Now, I would have liked to have seen what the result was if Ted Cruz had not done his dirty trick, which he claims he didn't know was a dirty trick when he was doing it. And there was another thing, too. His campaign sent out this really onerous-looking notice to people that looked like they were going to get a fine or something if they didn't go to the caucus or something. It's one of these, you know, the junk mail that you get it and it looks like it's some sort of official government announcement or something addressed to you that is really urgent and important. And then you open it up and it's some scheme or somebody wants to side your house or something like that. Well, that was one of those things. It looked very official. So, like that, I'm surprised that we don't have Caleb on the line yet. I wonder what's going on with that. Oh, wait a minute. I think we do have Caleb. I can say go live with him. Hi, Caleb. Are you there?
I'm here. How are you?
I'm sorry. I wasn't looking at the right screen. I was waiting. I'm great. I guess you had a little bit of issue with Skype tonight?
Yeah. I was calling in and I just heard silence. It was very strange. So.
Strange. Okay. Well, anyway, welcome to the show as always. And listen, you keep knocking them out of the park. I thought it was a great article about the price of oil. On this show, for years now, we've been monitoring the use of the price of oil as a tool in the toolkit of the national security state. In the, I guess it was in the 90s or in the 80s, I should say, it was used as a weapon against the Soviets and to hurt them with their oil exporting. Now, interestingly, that and of course, it would be hurting the Venezuelans under Hugo Chavez and company. And now that Iran is coming online with the sanctions lifted, right in time for that, the price of oil is in the tank. What do you think?
Oh, well, I think that this is not the natural workings of the market. This is direct price manipulation. And it's almost as obvious as it can be. I mean, there's no need for a big, conspiracy. I mean, this is just blatantly obvious what's going on. If you look, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is cutting their own throats. They are putting oil on the international markets. They're expanding their oil production apparatus. Every day, they're putting more and more oil out there. They're drilling. They're doing everything they can. And they're losing money in the process. The Saudi kingdom is having a huge internal crisis. Huge amounts of unemployment are taking place. People are losing their jobs. They actually opened the year by executing 47 people in one day because of the internal crisis. They're having a huge crackdown because people are really unhappy. And this even includes people in the royal family. So why are they cutting their own throats? Why are they splitting their own wrists? Why are they...
Can I hazard a guess? Maybe they listened to Sarah Palin when she said, drill, baby, drill.
Well, it wouldn't make sense. They would hurt themselves economically like this, but they're following orders. Their bosses at ExxonMobil and Chevron and BP are telling them to continue churning oil out onto the market, and they're obeying. Saudi Arabia is just an extension of the Wall Street oil corporations and the military contractors, I might add. They are the fourth largest military budget in the entire world, exclusively purchased from the United States and U.S. military contractors. And this is part of the U.S. foreign policy strategy. The Rockefeller family, right? That's one of the wealthiest families, Standard Oil all the way up to ExxonMobil today, one of the wealthiest families in the world. And they are also the primary funders of the Council on Foreign Relations, which is where the CIA does its research and proposes and comes up with all of its policies. This is a directly manufactured oil crisis. Basically, the price is being intentionally dropped to serve U.S. foreign policy objectives. And frankly, I think it's also serving domestic policies as well, because who is the main opposition to the Democratic Party in the United States? It's coming from Koch Industries, which is one of the major competitors with the ExxonMobil BP, Chevron, and the others. So this is direct price manipulation in order to strengthen the Democratic Party in the United States as well as weaken the opponents of the U.S. internationally.
Well, you raise a very interesting point. Now, this is something I've said a lot on the show. Sometimes I feel kind of lonely saying this stuff, but people call in, people write articles about the Saudis as if they're some kind of an independent entity. The Saudis, we got to teach them a lesson. They got to listen to us. And I pat them on the head and I say, that's very cute, but really the Saudis wouldn't be anywhere without the British installing them on the throne there and the United States backing them as well. They could be gone in 2 seconds. This is not, geographically, it's a pretty good sized country, but there's not many people there. They may buy a lot of weapons, but they don't have a very large army. I mean, they're too busy being princes and stuff, right? They depend entirely on the United States and probably, if the truth be known, on Israel for their defense. And they could be dispensed with in a moment. I mean, the Arab Spring, interestingly, avoided ultra-democratic Saudi Arabia, didn't it? And I don't think it would take very much at all to have a coup, a palace coup, or a color revolution or something to get rid of them if they didn't play ball. So that's maybe a reason why they're following orders and slitting their throat. How does that sound to you?
Oh, it's completely true. I don't think the Saudi king would wake up in the morning if he wasn't ordered to by the U.S. government and by his friends in the Wall Street military corporations and the oil corporations. They are a completely obedient regime, and they've been doing this kind of stuff for years. Let's remember that the money that went to Afghanistan, to Osama bin Laden and his friends, that eventually turned into Al-Qaeda, the money was processed through the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. In fact, it's the other side of the world, but in Nicaragua in the 1980s when the U.S. was funding the Contras, to try and overthrow.
Oh, yeah. Ronald Reagan went to the Saudis passing the hat, didn't he?
Yeah. The Saudis have been the middleman for U.S. foreign policy, for weapons, for money for a long time. They don't have an independent interest. However, we will occasionally, we're starting to see more denunciations of them in the U.S. press. And frankly, it's because I don't think they're going to be around too much longer. They're so unpopular. There's very few people in Saudi Arabia that are even Saudi. Let's keep in mind. The majority of people in Saudi Arabia are guest workers from another country. The majority of the Saudi military are people from Pakistan, people from Bangladesh who are basically hired mercenaries. They're bombing Yemen and just slaughtering people relentlessly as at this very moment that we're speaking. They're having a huge internal crisis, and it could be the end. But the Rockefellers, it's interesting. They're always pushing energy independence. There's a line that gets a lot. Essentially, there's a feeling among a lot of the power elite in the United States that oil gives too much power to third world countries. That's a feeling. Oil has enabled the Iranians to break out of the financial system controlled by Wall Street. It's enabled Venezuela to do that, and it's enabling the Russians to rise on the world economy. There's a real feeling that, they're always pushing this kind of pseudo-environmental stuff about, energy independence and, let's get away from this. And what they're really saying is they don't like the fact that oil enables third world countries to stand up.
I think they also have a vested interest in, I remember in the early days of the agreements and everything, where they were trying to get the Chinese to cut down on their use of energy, coal and oil, and now that the West has developed itself, they don't want anybody else to develop themselves the same way.
Sure. Now, in the U.S. we have the four big oil companies. They call them the Four Horsemen. All right, we're talking about
of the apocalypse. We'll be right back with Caleb Maupin just after this.
Sure.
Do not pass go. Go directly to jail. That's what lawbreakers normally hear from courts, but in Alabama, one judge is offering offenders a unique option for punishment. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, and in a moment, I'll tell you what it is.
Privacy is under attack. When you give up data about yourself, you'll never get it back again. And once your privacy is gone, you'll find your freedoms will start to vanish too. So protect your rights, say no to surveillance, and keep your information to yourself. Privacy, it's worth hanging on to. This message is brought to you by StartPage.com, the private search engine alternative to Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Start over with StartPage.
No country puts a bigger share of its citizens behind bars than the U.S. But in Bay Minette, Alabama, one judge is offering a novel alternative to jail. Go to church on Sundays. This only applies to people convicted of misdemeanors, and offenders must check in weekly with their pastor and the police. Then after 52 sermons, their cases are dismissed. The ACLU says this violates the separation between church and state, and other critics say it's unfair to atheists and minority religions. But I say the program is at least worth trying. Being in church on Sunday rather than a prison cell just might change the lives of people on the wrong path. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht for StartPage.com, the world's most private search engine.
Looking for some truth? You found it. LogosRadioNetwork.com.
right, good friends, welcome back. Tom Kiley, INN World Report Radio, every Tuesday and Thursday night here on the great Logos Radio Network. Tonight we're speaking with Caleb Maupin, and we'll be talking with him for another 30 minutes or so, 25 minutes or so. We'll take a break, and then for the first time, very excited, we're going to be joined by Emmy Award-winning opinion writer, talk show host, raconteur, Lionel. And that's really exciting for me. I used to call into Lionel's show all the time when he was here in New York as Tom from Brooklyn. And now it's going to be, and I must admit, Robert Parry was an inspiration for me to get into the alternative media. And on a radio talk show side of things, I could say Lionel influenced me and encouraged me in his own way, without knowing it perhaps. But here it is. Here's the result. So it's going to be Alpha and Omega. It's going to be very interesting. Lionel will be with us in just a little while. So Caleb, back to you, sir. A couple of things before we continue. As an aside, Caleb, I consider you a rising star in the alternative media fundament. You're right. You speak, you hold events, and that sort of thing. What was your inspiration, if I may ask, to get involved with what we usually refer to as alternative media?
Well, it's interesting. If you go through U.S. society, especially if you talk to young people now, a lot of them really have a sense that something is very, very wrong. It's interesting. Occasionally I'll meet young people who are kind of getting active, and they're like animal rights activists. And they seem to be really upset about, people eating meat and animals. And you talk to them, and the more you talk to them, you realize that they have a sense that something isn't right. And you find this a lot of different places. There's just a feeling that something about the way the country is moving is just wrong. And I think it manifests itself economically, but it also manifests itself politically. I think with the rise of police state repression and all of that. And there's a lot of young people who just feel that something is not right about U.S. society. We're not moving in a good direction. And this is young people from all across all different spectrums. We're talking, middle-class people. We're talking people from all kinds of different parts of the country, all kinds of different backgrounds, just know that something isn't right. And I'd say that I'm one of those young people. I grew up in a little town in Ohio, but I knew that something was not right about this society. Something was going wrong, and I had no idea. My little town in Ohio was very prosperous when I was growing up, and now, since it's part of the deindustrialized Midwest, it's just a disaster. The level of economic destitution there has drastically risen. If you you turn on the news, it's just shocking what's happening to the country, and no one seems to have an answer. And I think that if people really want to do good in the world, they have an obligation to find out what the problem is and try to solve it. I feel like I've done that, but I'm not alone. I feel like there are millions and millions of young people in the U.S. who really want to know what is wrong. Why are things moving in the direction that they're moving in? And what can we do to stop it?
Well, I agree with you. Unfortunately, though, perhaps in anticipation of this rising dissatisfaction, the powers that be, and this is something, by the way, that we talked with Gilad Atzmon about last weekend in New York on Sunday. We had a get-together about controlled opposition. And, there are lots of rabbit holes that are out there, pitfalls waiting to suck up that activist energy from people and direct it in more innocuous ways. You mentioned animal rights, the whole LGBT thing, which is like, hey, for sure, people should not be persecuted. No question about that. But on the grand scale of things, the number of people who suffer from that persecution, say, compared to the over 1 million murdered Iraqis because of our foreign policy, the scale is just really not the same, I don't think. Yet people put a lot of energy into that. How do you feel about that? There are so many of these. I don't mean to take away from anybody's pet issue or anything like that, but shouldn't one have a sense of propriety, of scale, proportion in this sort of thing?
Well, absolutely. And I think since really the 1950s, the policy of the CIA has been to try and kind of create a controlled opposition. They realized that if they were going to maintain power for a long time, they had to have kind of a controlled release, a way that politics and political discontent could be unleashed in a way that wouldn't really do any damage. Right now the Rockefeller think tanks, back to the oil companies, they are funding and really putting a lot of money into both the Black Lives Matter uprising against police brutality and the economic crisis. This Bernie Sanders stuff. If you want to hear about how evil the Koch brothers are, you can turn on the Rockefellers' MSNBC, and they'll tell you all day about how they're evil. But they'll never say anything about the Rockefellers, of course, and they're trying to get folks into a turf war, just be foot soldiers for one group of billionaires against another group of billionaires. And that's really
hold on one second. And that's the nature of oligarchy, by the way. That's why sometimes you have tyranny, tyrants, and sometimes you have oligarchies because nobody's strong enough to be the tyrant. So you've got this group of cutthroats that would stab each other in the back if they had the chance, But interesting that you say that because, yes, MSNBC has risen to the occasion to take up the gauntlet that Rupert Murdoch laid down with his Fox News organization. And they're sort of like twin sisters now, twin harpies, I would say. They balance each other out. And I've always been aware that, for a long time, General Electric, the big defense contractor, owned NBC. But you're pushing it a little further up the ladder and pointing it to the Rockefeller organization. Explain that to us. So, I know that General Electric sort of sold some of its interest at one point and so forth, but I believe there's still, if not majority, serious owners there. But take it up. Talk about General Electric and then the connection to the Rockefellers.
Well, let's go down the line. The Rockefellers, if you look at them, they're very, very liberal. They're funding the arts, art museums. They're funding. In fact, the land that the United Nations is located on was actually donated by the Rockefeller family. The Democratic Party apparatus, the George Soros networks, the Open Society Foundation. This is all an elaborate web of money that gets back to the Rockefellers, and also, they sit at the center of a lot of rich and powerful families. There's a very good book you can read called America's 60 Families. It was written by Lundberg, and it really gives you an idea of who the old money in the U.S. establishment is. We're talking about the Rockefellers, the Mellons, the Carnegies, the DuPonts. This is the old money. And the old money that's run the U.S. for so long is facing an opposition from what the French call nouveau riche, or new money. The Koch brothers kind of represent that. Their origin goes back to, they weren't millionaires and billionaires up until the 1950s. And the Republican Party has become the rallying center of the newly wealthy, the people who are new at having.
The Waltons are relatively new on the scene on that score, aren't they?
Who's that?
The Walton family is a relative newcomer to the billionaire club, aren't they?
Well, certainly, and I believe they're Republicans. Am I correct?
I don't know, but I don't know that it makes a great deal of difference when you get that high up because, the oligarchy has a right wing and a left wing, as we say on the show all the time. The oligarchy's right wing wants to beat the slaves to death, and the oligarchy's left wing wants to give them a cup of water while they're being beaten to death,
Right. Well, one of them has a long-term vision for ruling the world, and the others are new to having a seat at the table and very excited and want to make as much money as quickly as possible. In the end, they all have the same goal, and we can see it playing out. The low-wage police state that's emerging here in the United States. They're united in that, but the goal is the same. The strategy may be different. They have different methods for going there, and they blame each other for the failures now as the economy is just crumbling. The price of everything, it's not just oil. Copper is dropping, gold is dropping, natural gas is dropping. All the commodities are dropping. Everything is just dropping right now, and everything is pointing to a pending economic collapse. Pretty soon, we're going to be back where we were in 2008 and 2009, and frankly, I think it might be worse. Basically, underlying all of this is they've gotten way too good at making things. Their machines have become so efficient, and they're so good at making stuff that they don't have room for
they don't need people anymore. But let's hold at that, Caleb, because we have to take a break. I don't want to see you get cut off mid-sentence. We'll be right back with Caleb Mountain just after this.
Easy.
All right, good friends, welcome back. We're having a good time with someone who I consider a rising star, a young rising star in the alternative media fundament, and that would be Caleb Maupin. I'm talking with Caleb about his latest article that I thought was very good. Rockefellers Play with Fire. The oil scheme is getting more dangerous. It's in New Eastern Outlook, one of the publications that he writes for. He speaks, he talks, he does speaking engagements around the world. He's asked to come. And Caleb, before we finish up, tell everybody where they can go to get into your writings.
You can just visit my website, calebmaupin.info, CalebMaupin.info, and everything I write is there. So that's generally, and interviews I do, talks I give around the country and places. So.
Very good. We'll have to give you some of these too, so you can put them up there. Listen, you were talking about the Rockefellers before, and I wanted to go back to that a little bit. That's a very interesting artifact, isn't it? That the New World Order Central Headquarters, the United Nations building in New York City headquarters, was on land purchased by the Rockefellers for that purpose. Now, why would they part with a penny? Why would they part with a penny if it wasn't in their interest?
Of course. And among the elite, there is a section that understands that in order to hold on to power, it's necessary to give the illusion of democracy, give the illusion of transparency and change. And the Rockefellers really represent that more than any other section of the power elite in the U.S. They are very, very much from the understanding that you can run the United States in a more kind of liberal way. The Council on Foreign Relations actually published. It's very interesting. One of the issues of foreign affairs, which is the Council on Foreign Relations, that's the main CIA think tank. They published a document called The Social Democratic Future of the United States. They published this just a few years ago. And if you read it, and this was before the rise of Bernie Sanders and all of that, this is they very clearly state that in order to hold on to power, in order to have stability in the U.S., they need to move in a more social democratic direction. And that was kind of very carefully planned. We have Bernie the bomber running for president of the United States, talking about economic justice, talking about the evils of the millionaires and the billionaires, but at the same time calling the king of Jordan, the dictator, calling him a great hero, talking about the need to overthrow the Syrian government, supporting Israel as it murders the Palestinians, talking about the hate for Vladimir Putin and the Russian government, but at the same time giving kind of this populist message to the people of the United States. And he's really, struck a chord with so much of the U.S. population. But I feel like his overall message is the same as the people on the other side of the aisle. It's to make the dominance of these big corporations, to make the system work where a few people control all the wealth and power. You need to give a few people here at home a bigger chunk of the pie. And that's a strategy that I think the Rockefellers and others are behind. But then you have their opponents, the Koch brothers and others. There's a whole grouping around them. A lot of these people have gotten rich in hydraulic fracking. And are now giving in on the oil profits and making the Rockefellers kind of upset. They have a different strategy, and they just want to get as much as they possibly can, as quick as they possibly can. You'll notice with this
another target group, perhaps, for the lowering of the price of oil.
Exactly, because now they're pointing out ExxonMobil is starting to buy up some of these companies that have gotten into the fracking business. They're losing so much money at this point, so now the Exxon corporations and BP and others are buying them up, and they're getting rid of the fracking folks who have kind of moved in. You'll also notice that the 1973 oil export ban has been lifted. So now all this oil that's being fracked here in the United States can be sold on the international markets. So something is happening. I feel like the prices are going to drop very soon. I don't know if they'll drop dramatically or just gradually.
You feel prices are going to drop even more soon?
Yes, I think so.
Wow.
And I think everyone's kind of bracing for it. They're trying to get as much out of this as they possibly can. And they can't keep it going for too much longer. The stock market is already starting to creak and moan. They'd like us to all blame it on China. That's the thing. It's all China's fault that the stock market is upset. But if you look at it, the specific policies of U.S. corporations, specifically the oil price drop, is having a huge impact. There's a town in North Dakota that sprung up because of fracking. It was called Williston. The whole town, and people are moving there and working in the oil industry, and it's completely gone under. Housing in Houston. The Houston housing market is just crashing. The price of property in Houston is just declining because of this oil price drop. This can't go on forever.
Well, listen, if you can affect the market that way, it's a great way to swoop in and pick up things for pennies on the dollar. So, that would be an age-old strategy of crashing a market to come in and grab up the stuff. Hey, you know what? Maybe for environmental reasons, they won't allow the fracking to continue once the Rockefellers buy up all of the fracking industry for nothing. But who knows? That would be very interesting. Now, I will caution you, when you say that the Rockefellers like to be more democratic, are you familiar with the report from the Trilateral Commission, another Rockefeller group, from I think it was 1975, Michael Kreuzer and Samuel P. Huntington and another guy, The Crisis of Democracy, on the Governability of Democracies. Are you familiar with that document?
I'm not.
Book.
Tell me more.
Well, in 1975, the Rockefellers, through the Trilateral Commission, commissioned this report. And its determination was the report, and I'll read here from Wikipedia, which is not the greatest source of information, but it's oftentimes a start. The report observed the political state of the United States, Europe, and Japan, and said that in the United States, the problems of governance, quote, stem from an excess of democracy. end quote, and thus advocates, quote, to restore the prestige and authority of central government institutions, end quote. The report serves as an important point of reference for studies focusing on the contemporary crisis of democracy. So I would urge you to take a look at that. That along with who's that Supreme Court justice that worked with the Chamber of Commerce? He became a Supreme Court justice subsequently, and he wrote the blueprint on how to destroy the middle class because they were getting too powerful. What the heck was that one? I'll have to.
Well, if you look at this crisis in Flint with the poisoned water, what is underlying that is the fact that in Michigan they have a law that if your city is in debt, they can remove the elected local government and put in an emergency manager, right? And that this is happening all over the Western world. We're starting to see that, when cities are declared to be financially in debt or in a state of financial emergency, and this can go for states, in some places it can go for entire governments, right. They're declaring that then the government has to be removed and that they have to put in, some kind of figure with, unquestionable power, unchecked power, who can fix the situation.
Well, they fix the situation by denying any kind of expenditure. But it's not that there's a shortage of money. There's plenty of money. I mean, I don't know. You could have probably really fixed Flint's problems early on with just the price of a couple of cruise missiles or something. You know what I mean? There's plenty of money. It's just not being spent on we the people. It's being spent on killing brown-skinned people on the other side of the world. The other thing, by the way, about that, interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
There are billions and billions of dollars sitting in bank accounts, not just here in the U.S., but in the Cayman Islands and in Sweden. But the people who own that money are not able to make any money investing it. That is the problem. So there's billions and billions of dollars just sitting in these bank accounts. And because of the financial crisis and because of the computer revolution, it's not profitable for this money to be invested. That's the problem. It's not that there's not enough money out there. There's plenty of money. It's just not profitable through investment.
And, you mean you can make more money playing the casino and derivatives and stuff? Is that what you're saying?
Well, or it's just sitting there. I mean, that's the thing. If the market is the way it is right now, with the price of everything declining, with production so efficient, you're not going to make a return on your investment. And you only invest money if you expect to make a profit from doing so. It's not charity. People don't, we have this idea of job creators. Like the rich say, I want to give this many people a job today. I'm going to do this. No, I mean, you invest in order to see a return on your investment. And if you're not going to see a return on your investment, why would you invest? But then,
I'd like for you to do an article. Have you done an article about this? Because this is very interesting. I don't know that I've heard this. Large pools of money sitting on the sidelines. Now, I know about large pools of money that are invested in pension funds that are owned, in fact, by the state. There's, $1 trillion or more in the state of California that's sitting in pension funds, yet they still take pension money out of their workers' pay and so forth. You're not talking about that.
No. During the 2012 election, we heard a little bit about it. Mitt Romney, it was revealed, had a lot of money sitting in overseas bank accounts. It was just sitting there. But he's not alone. All of the rich and powerful, all the billionaires, have lots and lots of money that's just sitting places because they can't return an investment on it. They can't make money off of. I
thought it was that they didn't want to repatriate it here to the States because they'd be paying taxes on it. But you sound like you're talking about something else.
Well, I mean, that is true. That's why it's overseas and not here in this country, is because they can avoid the taxes. But the reason it's just sitting there, the reason it's not being invested and all of that is because the economy is the way it is and they can't see a return on it. And that's the ultimate problem. There's plenty of wealth in this world. They talk about overpopulation. The Rockefellers like to push that too. They're always talking about overpopulation. Oh, there's too many people. No, there's not too many people.
They're big eugenicists, aren't they?
Yes, they are. But there's not too many people in this world. There's enough money and there's enough food being produced. Everyone could have a decent life. The problem is the way these resources are allocated and the way the wealth is set up. We have an economic global system where money is allocated based on how much profit can be made. Nothing gets done with a business can make profits off of it. And that's why we're in the mess we're in.
Right. The gold standard is not for the good of society. It's, society can be damned. It's if, you're going to make enough profit. I'll say one more thing real quick, Caleb. You know what else is interesting? In the end, I bet they're going to it's going to cost a lot more money, the blunders of these emergency managers, than what the intent of that law was to save in the first place. But anyway, Caleb Maupin, CalebMaupin.info, correct, Caleb?
That's me. Yep.
Listen, thank you, brother. Thanks for doing such great work, and I'm sure we're going to have you back on real soon.
It was a pleasure to be on, as always.
Thank you very much. Caleb Maupin. Now listen, friends, drum roll, please. Lionel, the great, will be with us on the other side of this break. Friends, welcome back. Tom Kiley, INN World Report Radio, every Tuesday and Thursday night here on the great Logos Radio Network. And I am all a Twitter, and I'm not referring to some vapid technology used by all the kids today. I am excited because, as many of you know, I've told you about this. We've got our guest Lionel on the line with us. This is someone who is an Emmy Award-winning a talk show host, journalist, investigative reporter, trial lawyer, former prosecutor, raconteur, man about town. And Lionel, I told everybody, I would say, generally speaking, maybe if we generalize, we could say you're of a libertarian bent, and I do mean bent, with a libertine bent. Anyway,
libertine, yes.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. Thank you for that incredible encomium, that introduction, that proem, that prolegomenon, that intro. I appreciate it immensely. Let me start off the bat by saying, Dick, that
Dick Tracy.
I just love that, buddy. I'm an old school. Dick. What? My name is George. Yeah, right. But I hate labels, and I am telling you right now that if somebody were to say to me that they were libertarian, normally what that means is that they probably are the old adage, the old apothegm was that it's a Republican who wants to smoke dope, and libertarian and kind of involves and connotes the freedom in the Constitution and less government and dope, and a lot of dope. Dope is a big part of this thing, leave me alone, let me do what I want to do. And that is a part of it. That's like saying, there were many, many aspects of Mussolini's fascism that, believe it or not, were really good. That's corporatocracy and merging. And if I were to pick out a few and say, yes, I'm a fascist, but the best part, I am come to the conclusion that a lot of what libertarianism is actually evil. It's not what you think it is. Those parts that we like about it, we can accomplish without necessarily going to the Mont Pelerin, von Mises, von Hayek, Austrian economic school, which is really harsh. So I think I've spoken too much about this. So,
great for the oligarchs, right?
Yes, but you see, one of the things that I want all of your listeners, all of my potential apostles, let us lose labels, lose ideology, lose anything that involves either pigeonholing or delaying the implementation of a particular policy in lieu of arguing whether or not this is progressive or conservative or libertarian or whatever. I mean, really, labels do more harm because, there are some parts of every, ideological system that I agree with. There are parts of it. I'm a kind of a cafeteria logician. I find that makes sense and that makes sense. So libertarian, the stuff that you're talking about, sure. Economic libertarian, no. Austrian school, no. Rand Paul,
the so-called free market.
Well, that sounds great, doesn't it? Free market. Who gives
free? It's free until you introduce a single human being, and then it starts to get unfree.
Well, we always talk about this. I'm sure you have heard about this, but we always talk about Bilderberg, right? And that group of folks. Have you had the pleasure of discussing that particular group, that august group?
Oh yeah. It's a well-known fact, on this program.
Not to a lot of people. But I want to refer you to
thanks to the New York Times, right?
Or anybody else for that matter. But I want to refer you to the Mont Pelerin Society. This is the libertarian version of this, and just do some research. Maybe not now, but that is the essence of what American libertarianism really is. So I think we've said enough about that. So I don't know. I'm kind of a political and ideological and a philosophical omnivore, if that makes any sense.
No, it does, and I warned everyone that it's not easy to paint a verbal picture of you, at least as I know you, Lionel, from being a listener for many years here in New York City when you were at WABC during the Clinton era, when I learned a lot about impeachment and things. Were you the guy that is responsible for that term bouncing around in my head, vagaries and vicissitudes, or was that another?
Yes.
Are you the person? Uh-huh.
Well, I've said it before. I'm being rather alliterative. Yes, indeed. But
yes, that's why. So I tend to separate the words nowadays and use them independently. But I listened to you a great deal, and not only did I learn a lot, I was absolutely well entertained while I was listening.
Well, that's the certainly the goal of it right now. But I've got to tell you, I will turn the floor over to you, the subject matter. But right off the bat, and this is a big problem today, especially anybody who tries to deal with conventional mainstream media and the like. If you are not able to be labeled, itemized immediately, because people are so not conversant with the issues, they don't know how to deal with you. Because a lot of people, frankly, who should be or who shouldn't be handling news, are are involved in very important programming levels in all aspects of conventional mainstream media, or as I call it, sock puppet media, because that's pretty much what it is. I mean, imagine working for a sports radio station and not knowing the first thing about sports, but saying, yeah, but I have a radio or TV or print background, but you know nothing about sports. Yes, but I know how to turn the transmitter on. I know how to fix the camera. They would say, no, it's the substance that you know nothing about. Sports programming is really the purest opinion format there is, because you have to know what the hell you're talking about.
And there's kind of no right and no wrong. You know, everyone can argue whether if they got this guy instead of that guy, what could have happened. You know, so even the guy at the water cooler is an expert when it comes to that, right?
And when you lose, you lose. That's number one. It's a very brutal meritocracy, you know, points and whatever. But also, if you are a Yankees fan, if you're a Red Sox fan, you can hate the front office. You can hate the manager. You can hate the trade. You can hate the play. You can hate the way your team is being mishandled, but you don't become an un-Yankee like you are an un-American. You can always love your country in my world and despise the government, despise the administration or the governor or the mayor or the county commissioner, whoever it is, and not lose your affiliation with your country. Sports, you never lose you're a Yankees fan or a Mets fan or whatever it is till the day you die. It has nothing to do. In fact, the more you love your team, sometimes the more critical you are, because you expect them to act better. You remember them in their glory days. You remember this. And this is not, they're not playing up to their standards. That's the way I feel about our country. I love us, you and me. The government's another story. They come and go. We remain the same.
And they have about as much accountability as the front office at the Red Sox too, as well. And
well,
you can't
less.
get rid of them.
Yeah. But even then, you know, and right now, I mean, God, it's got to be so tough for anybody who is watching. Look at have you ever been to a really bad buffet? Or you go to a restaurant or a wedding and you're thinking, I don't want any of this stuff. You know, you have your choice of this or that. I don't want this. I should have eaten before I came here. I want a sandwich. I hate this. That's me. It's like, you're kidding. That's why I always write my name in every 4 years versus picking one of these folks.
Well, that's a great point. So many people get apathetic. I'm not going to. I said, please, the last thing you should do is not vote. I mean, vote for my dog, vote for me, vote for Alfred E. Newman, vote for somebody. But if some magical day 51% of the population voted for someone else, somebody would have to take up notice of that. And,
You know, but it's funny. It's a very good point. But I'm kind of torn about that. And I'll tell you why. When a movie, let's say, debuts, premieres, and 4 people show up, they pull it. They say it's a disaster. My dream, my fantasy, my thought experiment fantasy is to have an election and nobody votes. Nobody shows up. Nobody cares. We say, sorry, not interested in these people. Oh, we love the elections without the process. But if this is what you're giving, we don't want to go to this movie. I am not, if I don't see the latest whatever, I'm not saying I don't want to be a part of the film industry, or I don't like film, or I don't. I'm saying I have no interest in this. You know, George Carlin said, if you vote, you can't complain, which is a kind of a twist of the usual adage. If you don't vote, you can't complain. He says you're encouraging people. And either Emma Goldman or one of the Berrigan brothers said, if voting really mattered, it would be illegal. So, you know, you kind of ask yourself, why are we so committed to this robotic procedure where we show up? Okay, well, the lesser of two evil is still evil, by the way. But why is it that we think that's such a grand way to run the country, by voting? I write my name in every 4 years. And I mean, there's other people I kind of vote for. I want to say something about, you know, that referenda and things like that. But between who? Hillary and Trump or whatever? No, my name. In fact, I ask you, sir, vote Lionel, Lionel, period.
Well, if I ever got to the point where I wasn't going to vote for somebody of note, that is a politician, I would certainly consider that. I would say, however, that, you know, the oligarchs would be just fine with nobody voting. They do everything they can to discourage turnout as it is. So if somebody would say, oh, nobody voted, we got to do something, then I would agree with you. But I don't think that's the case. They would probably say, yeah, well, we want more of that. As a matter of fact, since nobody's interested anymore, why don't we just call off the elections? It's a kind of a pantomime anyway. The people that we anoint usually get in, and let's dispense with the effort.
Let me ask you a question. Let
Please.
us imagine that we have think years ago it was, what was it? Have It Your Way, whatever. I forget this, Burger King or Wendy's. Who the hell knows? Anyway, I want to know, right now we're going to design a candidate or an election or whatever. And I want, irrespective of party, tell me the issues that if this man or woman or whoever were to say this, your jaw would drop, your heart would melt, your wallet would open, and you would say, I am yours. Calgon, take me away. What are the issues that mean the most to you? Forget anything you've heard. I'm asking you a question. Just thought experiment.
Sure. I mean, it's a great question, and we're going to take advantage of a pregnant pause here because we have to go on break. But we'll be right back with Lionel, and I'm going to, I don't need the time to do it, but I will take the time and
win. This is the Logos Radio Network.
All right, good friends, the great Aretha Franklin singing Think, and that's the kind of thing that our guest inspires in his listeners. We're talking about the great Lionel. I think he's great anyway. Emmy Award-winning raconteur, trial lawyer, prosecutor. But Lionel, you make people think you do it with a plum, I guess.
Yes, I was going to say, yes, a plum indeed. Well,
probably a pickle and a few other things.
Sometimes they think, sometimes they don't, but that's not my goal. I'm not a missionary and I'm not a philosopher. I am who I am, sir.
All right. So you asked me a question before.
Yes.
Okay.
My question was, if you had to pick your ideal candidate, specifically your ideal issues, what do you want to hear?
Well, look, I need to take a step back first because I got into the alternative media at the theft of the 2000 election. And we finally got on the air about 2002. We would have been on the air in 2001, but 9/11 knocked us back a little bit. And I've been doing it ever since. Why would I get involved? Because they're not doing their job in the mainstream media. So, if an excellent voice was trying to tell people something in a forest where there was nobody, it wouldn't be heard, right? So we wanted to create the space. So I would take a step back and say the most ideal candidate in the world is not the issue as much as, the structure that has come up to prevent such a person from being successful. So
tell me the issues.
Yeah, the issues. Well, the issues are that, since the advent of the so-called democratic process, we are supposedly to have a say in the matter. What would I like to see as the goal of us working together as a society? And for me, it means some sort of a situation where together we're better off than we would be individually, and that our prosperity can be shared in for all, not necessarily in equal measure, but in a life-sustaining way. And clearly, that is not the goal of our society. The goal of our society is obviously to make a very, very tiny fraction of our society incredibly wealthy. And whether or not the rest of us survive is, hey, Jack, I got mine, you go get yours. So that's the system that I think we are entitled to if we truly are a democratic system. Who would vote for this stuff, Lionel?
Well, we're not democratic, and we're not a democracy. We're a republic, and we are a different kind of a kettle of fish. We're not really what people think we are. Mm-hmm. And if I, by the way, just to give you an idea of the framework that I'm looking for, if I answer the question, what I'm trying to find, and I can't find it. But if somebody came out and said the following, and I have this kind of a thought experiment, it's a bit of a fantasy, but the president, this would have to be done after he or she were elected, but comes out and is surrounded by ninjas, about 10 of them wearing black ninja outfits, absolutely ninja. And the president would say, you're probably wondering who these people are. Yes, they are ninjas. And they're sworn to protect me. And they are only going to protect me, and I will always travel with them. And that's why. And you'll find out now why I have them here, because I have immediately fired my Secret Service, FBI, Justice Department. I'm starting anew. I'm signing an executive order, and you can fight me on this, that will nationalize the Fed. I am doing something that's completely different. Number one, this is our new world. This is our new plan. I will promise you, not one American soldier or Marine or sailor or airman or anybody will ever be involved in any venture anywhere unless there is a direct and actual, real, tenable, palpable, an extent of threat to us. Not theoretical. I'm not going to go after somebody because I want to secure their oil or their natural gas or their water rights under the guise of terrorism. No. That's number one. I promise you. And that means that I'm calling virtually everybody home. I'm not even sure why we have bases. I'm not even sure, but they're coming home. That's number one. And if Hillary Clinton is elected, you are going to see more wars than you could ever imagine, because she is a warmonger and a Wall Street shill. But she's a warmonger of the first order. She will absolutely, and to be fair, if you go and you see Hamlet, and you go to BAM or a Brooklyn theater, and you were to dislike Hamlet, your beef is really with Shakespeare, with the storyline. You can like the rendition of it, but the script's already been written. That's the precedent. Scripts are written in 25-year increments, and the president basically just follows through with what was written. Obama didn't carry through virtually anything that he said he would do. He couldn't, because he had to follow the script. And the script is imperialism, globalist, asset stripping, jackal warfare. That's what we do. That's who we are. In our 239 years of existence, we have been at war for 80-90% of the time, somewhere killing someone. And the first thing that anybody could ever do for me to run for president is that no more. I'm going to decimate. I'm going to the military. We don't need. We'll have always be able to defend ourselves. But this military industrial complex, a la Ike, this is a fraud. This is an absolute fraud. These fictional ersatz fugazi, these counterfeit synthetic wars on terror, that has to stop. If somebody said that to me, I would first of all clutch my heart and die on the spot because of a massive MI after hearing something that I don't think I'd ever hear from anybody. Because, I'm a child kind of the 60s. I remember Vietnam. I was born into that. I was born in 58. So when I was a kid, I remember Vietnam. I was too young for it, but I remember the music and the anti-war movement, and it was a part of our social texture and fabric. It was who we were. We were anti-war. Anti-defense? No. Anti-war. Nobody's saying that. Nobody's saying that. That's the first.
They changed the name of the War Department to the Defense Department after World War II. That ought to give you a hint right there.
And whether they did or not, it changed, completely. Everything after, if you think about it, started really with World War I, and then you could start to see the changes right around 1913. The
imperialism started with the Spanish-American War, really overseas.
Well, think about
Philippines and the poor people in the Philippines were just about getting rid of the Spanish when we came in. They thought we were going to help them out, and we patted them on the head and said, "No, you Asian Negroes are not going to be ready for democracy for at least another 100 years." Huh?
And we had our first, well, not our first, but one of the most notable and noted false flag operations, the Maine in Havana Harbor in 1898. Right. We also had this classic involvement a la Hearst of the media creating the event. What did Hearst say? Give me the pictures and I'll give you a war or something like that. So
yellow journalism. Right?
So that started, and we have not. Our next theater of war, make a note of it right now, is going to be, of course, Africa. And the next currency of war, in addition to everything else, that might be hidden, is going to be water, because hydro-imperialism is the most important kind of hidden and literally a subterranean aspect of it. A little background, which I find fascinating. Muammar Gaddafi was kind of like our buddy for a while. We was the media, of course, being repeaters and not reporters, translated and relayed this theme that he was indeed this madman with the Sgt. Pepper outfit, and that he was responsible for Lockerbie, though it might have been Iran at the time, and he took the fall, but it's a different story.
Hold on. We're going to have to go on break. Lionel is with us, and first half of this hour is done. We got another half hour with him, and it's interesting. We'll be right back just after this.
The world's richest woman says in order to get rich, you have to think rich. Okay, but how exactly do you do that? I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, and when I come back, I'll explain how rich people think differently from everyone else.
Privacy is under attack. When you give up data about yourself, you'll never get it back again. And once your privacy is gone, you'll find your freedoms will start to vanish too. So protect your rights, say no to surveillance, and keep your information to yourself. Privacy, it's worth hanging on to. This message is brought to you by StartPage.com, the private search engine alternative to Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Start over with StartPage.
To many wealthy people, such as Gina Reinhart, the world's richest woman, making lots of money is all about cultivating a mindset, a rich mindset. So what is that? Steve Seibold, author of How Rich People Think, says it starts by understanding that money is not the root of all evil, and that building wealth is best done with other people's money. The rich, he writes, are prepared to take risks to get rich. They'd rather be educated than entertained. They focus on earning rather than saving, and they view selfishness not as a vice, but as a virtue. Gordon Gekko, eat your heart out, I think. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht for StartPage.com, the world's most private search engine.
We'll be kidding about chemtrails.
You're listening to the Logos Radio Network at logosradionetwork.com.
Good friends, welcome back. Now, I hope it doesn't sound too crazy, but I really have learned a great deal from our guest, Lionel. As you can tell, he is very, very entertaining and knowledgeable. Lionel, is it erudite or erudite? I used to say erudite.
I prefer erudite, but it's pronounced erudite. And if I could, being the master of erudition and the plug, I hope that you have my own, not my bona fides, but I'm at LionelMedia.com.
Yes, I said that before, but let's get down to that, because they're clamoring right now. How do we get in touch with this guy? How do we listen to his stuff? Tell us a little bit about you've become a bit of an entity now, I think, haven't you?
Well, I don't know what that means, but it's LionelMedia.com, and Twitter is at LionelMedia. That's it. And now, that will send you to I have a law firm and do other things as well, but that's it. But LionelMedia.com. And at Lionel Media, because Twitter and these things are still these little morsels, these little orts of thought and microblogging. It's to me fascinating. So those are the two places where you can. That's your ignition switch into a new parallel universe.
Speaking of the parallel universe, I first crossed swords with you, intellectual ones that was, when you were on WABC here in New York. And as I understood it, you were an attorney in Tampa or something, and you were calling into shows. I heard the same thing about Sean Hannity, by the way. And they found you so interesting that somebody offered you your own show. I believe it was a competitor or something. And then somebody from WABC, the sort of flagship of talk radio in this country, offered you a position here, and you came here. That was a long time ago. Then under mysterious, at least to me, circumstances, you sort of disappeared from the New York radio scene. I heard things about Sirius or XM or something, and that you were around, and now I catch bits and pieces of you on the internet and so forth. What's transpired since then to now? What are you doing? On
WABC, in no particular order, I went from WABC. I had a syndicated show on Premiere. I was on Court TV. I was on WOR. Another, probably anytime you hear a three-lettered station, call letters, that's heritage. WLS, WOR. Anytime you hear three, that's big. But so ABC Premiere, I did that. I did internet radio on something called IATA.com before anybody did it, before even broadband was able and had the heft to handle the bandwidth. I also went to Court TV. Later on, Air America. I was on Pix 11. I was doing commentary for that. Won an Emmy on that as well.
That was great, by the way. I thought it was wonderful.
Let me tell you something. That was, but, and also, but I'm doing a lot of great commentary and analysis for the great people at RT, Russia Today, which is just, oh my God, wonderful in terms of the amount of time and nobody's ever said, I don't know if anybody's going to understand that. It's like, no, it's more European. It's a different kind of worldview, but and so that's what I'm doing.
If I may, on the subject of Russia Today, briefly, you had recently John Kerry bemoaning the fact, and they got Press TV pushed out of England and so forth. This is Russian sponsored. Excuse me, there's a little thing called Air America. Radio Free Europe and Voice of America. We've been doing the same thing for since the end of World War II. So why isn't what's sauce for the goose, sauce for the gander?
You only know when something is effective when someone's screaming. if you and I are in a wrestling match and I'm applying a hold to you and you submit after screaming for a while, I think that's been very effective. So the greatest, look, we have BBG, the broadcast, kind of our own Radio Free Europe type of thing. All I know is that I say whatever I want to say, whoever wants to listen to it. I frankly don't really care. If you're FM or AM or international, the world is so huge right now, and it always has been huge. But in terms of media, when you talk to people who are very provincial, who don't understand that there is a world view, a European view, an Asian view, a whatever, that is, whether it's a Press TV or France 24 or Canal or Al Jazeera when they were Al Jazeera America, they're still around. BBC, it's rather pedestrian to think that somebody wants to say, well, that's kind of propaganda. Remember, propaganda means something you don't agree with.
Yeah.
If you agree with it, then it's terrific.
On this, if I may, on a sidebar, as you all say in the legal business, Al Jazeera, did you ever see, or did anyone ever bring to your attention the propaganda that Al Jazeera put out during the Libya operation, where they tried to convince particularly the Libyans, to demoralize the Libyans into thinking that Muammar Gaddafi had fallen way before he actually did? And to do that, they built a very large television set in Qatar resembling Green Square in Tripoli, and they had the typical celebrating and shooting of the guns, but they were tight shots, so you couldn't see that there weren't very big crowds and so forth. But it was proven to be a hoax because they could not.
I'm sorry to say that I did not know that.
I will send it to you, Lionel.
You know
it's important to see.
Touche. Yeah. Touche. There was a time when I think maybe it was the documentary Control Room that might have done this, where they showed, remember when they toppled the Saddam statue and the Iraqis came out, hitting the pummeling the statue with their shoes. Well, those
tight
were
shot.
Right, but
tight shot, hardly anybody there.
Right, then they backed up, and somebody who was listening, who was far more versed and conversant with accents, said, "Wait a minute, those aren't Iraqis. That's somebody else." So listen, I've got the Warren Report. If you want to talk about propaganda.
Well, all right. Now you're starting to go down the rabbit hole. Of that, I shall ask you the following.
May I
please
say something? There is no rabbit hole. Let me just tell you something. There is
this is getting Zen here. Hold us hole here.
That is the hole. That is where we begin. That is everything. This is the rabbit hole. Mm-hmm. The Super Bowl is a rabbit hole. The rabbit hole means kind of like this, almost like a black hole, this gravitational magnet where you're pulled into this kind of an amorphous, confused, conspiratorial, kind of dangerous way. No, that's where we should be. This other crap, that's the rabbit hole. So right off the bat, my favorite word, I love this, is the notion of the conspiracy theory. And
that is exactly where I was going. And let me ask you.
You have to. Certainly.
Well, no, wait. Do you know how that came into currency, that term, as a pejorative?
Well, I know that the CIA, in a very famous memorandum, in order to debunk or to quell or to stifle a lot of the anti-Warren Report sentiment at the time, specifically listed the use of conspiracy theory as a pejorative to, you can Google this, but to stifle or to attack those people who would dare call into question this report. So in terms
of and there's a memorandum that got leaked where you can see 1967 they were concerned, and this went out to our assets in the media, which that's that's right, and they're not supposed to be operating in the United States anyway. So yes, Lionel gets the car. Give him one of the cars, okay? That's.
Also a couple of things too, which is
sure.
Gore Vidal, who is Gore Vidal is like a wine. The more you watch it, you think, why did I not recognize this brilliance before? Sometimes depth has a way of cementing.
Jeff becomes him. Anyway, hold on. We're going to be right back with Lionel in our final segment tonight. We'll be right back just after this.
Increase in mental functioning.
Led Zeppelin playing When the Levee Breaks. The Led Zeppelin of talk radio is with us, and I don't mean that in like the bomb where they got that in from. But no, they were absolutely great group, and that's who's here, Lionel. I hope you're enjoying the show. LionelMedia.com is where you go to find out all things Lionel, and I will warn you, he is sometimes referred to in the third person there, and as you can see, there's good reason for that.
Oh, yeah,
I suppose.
Absolutely. Yeah, and also on Twitter at Lionel Media. By the way, a couple of things. I know that we are playing in the great city of Austin, and yes. I want to say two things about that city. Number one, I want to go there because of two things. Number one, the music scene, and one of my old buddies, and I think, well, not old in age, but long-time buddies, and I think one of the greatest country music singers today is Dale Watson. Dale Watson is a popular musician in Austin and has always made it popular. So I'm going to do a shout out, as the kids say, to that. And also, even though I am, well, you wouldn't know this, but I'm a vegan. But when I ate meat, I'm a purveyor of barbecue. And I want to go just to look at Franklin Barbecue, just to look at it, just to smell it. I don't want to eat it, but I watch barbecue YouTube shows, and it's to me, it's like almost porn. And what Texas barbecue is I think I don't want to say the Mecca, but it's the epicenter. So those are my two things, and how Austin has, and it goes back to the roots rock days, because I'm a lover of a quintessentially American music, and that's the Vortex, that's the Navel, that's the Umbilicus, that's the really the Mecca. I don't know if you can say Mecca today with all this Islamophobia out there, but hats off and shout out to Austin TX.
So have you ever been to Austin?
No, that's why I said
Lionel, may I propose? I have a lot of wonderful, wonderful listeners there, and I've been there a couple of times, and they've treated me like unbelievable. We've had a great time. How about a couple of New Yorkers here? Take Austin. Let's go to Austin. I can introduce it to the audience. We can have an event. Brave New Books would be happy to host you. Why don't we do that?
Would love to.
All right, friends. I've been telling you, I'm on my way back to Austin. This is a great reason. Maybe we could bring a few of the guests that we have on our show. I know there's a lot of people that want to go. A lot of people that write books speak at Brave New Books there. That always plays the show live while we're talking. Roger Stone was on the show recently. I had him on for the first time.
I'm a big fan of Roger Stone. And speaking of Austin, I'd be remiss if I didn't say a good buddy of mine, Alex Jones, who is absolutely critical in the pantheon of whatever it is. This is alternative media talk and the like. Let me say something. Talk radio, terrestrial, conventional media, whatever you want to call it, owes so much to Rush Limbaugh and Howard Stern. There are people who made tremendous strides in this pantheon, this Hall of Fame, and Alex from Austin certainly is hats off to him as well, because these are critical people. I always have this thing. I'm a music lover, American music in particular, and I have different styles that I like, and I have this idea of this program, this computer, in which I go back in history and I remove a person or a group from the algorithm, from the tape, from the memory of current music.
Oh boy, and it all falls apart after that.
And then I run the tape back, and what would music sound like had there been no Beatles, had there been no Elvis, had there been no, and you may not, and I'm not a big Beatles fan. I hate to say this, might sound heretical to say this, but we needed the Beatles. And we needed Elvis, and you needed a Frankie Lane, and you needed a Lawrence Welk, and you needed these people, because if you took these interstitial, very critical people out of this progression, we wouldn't be where we are today. So, by that analogy, people like Alex and yourself and others and Rush and I don't care, and Stern and others, and go back to Joe Pine, and go back to Bob Grant, and go back to a lot of people.
Bob Grant, Bob Gigante, Jay Diamond,
who made this what it is, because remember. You can call it spoken word. I do stand up, and I hate that term, but I call it outspoken word. But you cannot get a Spotify or a Pandora or an algorithm for talk. You cannot program. There's no synthetic keyboards for talk. You need somebody or a group of people to sit there and say something new every single day. And it can't be synthesized. It has to be new.
Well, they're working on it.
Well, they are. But in the mix of this, and I just want to throw this out, and I mentioned Alex and you and others in good stead. the word conspiracy theory, and also going back to Gore Vidal, I want to tie this all together. Gore Vidal said a couple of things which I thought were terrific. He said, I am not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a conspiracy analyst. And I love that. Number two, he said, it is an article of faith that you must not believe in, quote, conspiracy theories. And number three, conspiracy theory has been a replacement for the unspeakable truth. And anytime you want to throw the rest of the conversation off, but pique my curiosity and draw me to the flame, say conspiracy theory. I'm in. I'm with you. It's used, frankly, incorrectly most of the time. It does not mean when the government is hiding something from you. That's not a conspiracy theory. Conspiracy in law are two guilty people conspiring and confederating and agreeing to do something illegal. You and I are planning something. A conspiracy theory certainly existed with the JFK assassination. More than one people. Lee Harvey Oswald did not act by himself. We all know this. It's axiomatic. We know that. A conspiracy theory also doesn't mean necessarily that you know who are a part of the conspiracy. And you can't say inside job every time you want to point to something that is curious. If you have a question about why something happened, you don't necessarily say inside job or it's the government. You just have to sit back sometimes and say, that's very odd. It's like making a murderer. There are some aspects of that particular case that I'm telling you I don't understand, and I've got to wait. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the cops. It doesn't necessarily mean we mentioned 9/11. Whenever somebody points to something with 9/11, they say, aha, it was Cheney. Aha, it was Bush. Aha. No, stop. You're pointing. That's why I stay away from truthers and birthers and any ers out there, because there's this evangelical mosh pit of for lack of a better word, kind of a...
Well, and not even all of that is legit either. There's a lot of, operatives in there to confuse things. But yeah, I'm with you. There are enough things about 9/11 that are beyond dispute, that are just the laws of physics that we can talk about.
Forget how buildings fell. I'm not even talking about that. Anybody who doesn't have questions about that doesn't know the facts.
Yeah.
And so that's but what happens is, because mainstream media, or lamestream media, as Sarah Palin says, because of the sock puppet, bumper sticker, playbook, echo chamber, cookie cutter, impuissant, vacuous, vapid, usual claptrap about nothing, because you and I and others want more than that. We're in a very large tent and a very large theater and a very large arena that wants to hear something.
And
that's
it's getting bigger every day.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's going to be, thanks to the likes of you, sir.
Well, you were a major inspiration for me, Lionel. I mean, Bob Perry, Robert Perry, the guy who broke the Contra part of Iran-Contra, was perhaps the primary inspiration for me to get into this sort of investigative stuff. But let me say a few things. To dismiss conspiracy theorizing out of hand means that there's no such things as conspiracies, which is ridiculous. And by the very definition, a conspiracy requires theorizing about it for it to become known, because a lot of it's hidden. Austin, music, Eric Johnson, the great guitar player.
Oh, yes.
James McMurtry, are you familiar with his work? He's out of Austin, I believe, as well. They don't make it here anymore. I'll send you some of his music, and maybe we can get to do some music there in Austin. Alex Jones, friend of the show. Alex, we worked together with Alex at INN back when we were on Free Speech TV in the television days, and especially in the years right after 9/11, when there were big anniversary events in New York, and he came out to New York City with the Bullhorn, and there were big events and so forth. Unfortunately, that's not the case so much anymore. But yes, Alex is a luminary, if not the North Star in the alternative media fundament, I would say.
But he's critical, and other people were as well. And we need, obviously, more people to make the world interesting. There's so much to talk about.
Well, you've been a trailblazer there, and we're running out of time. So
thank you,
is it fair to... Well, thank you, sir. Is it fair to say, Lionel, that this was an appetizer, this was an introductory show, and we can have you on a little more often?
Think of this as an amuse-bouche.
Well, if I knew what that meant, I would say right off the bat, I'm going to trust it, but it sounds interesting, I'll tell you that much.
Thank you so very much. It was indeed an honor and a privilege, sir.
LionelMedia.com. Thank you, Lionel, for inspiring me. And we will be back on. Have a great weekend. We'll be back on Tuesday.